everyone, it's Jeannie here. Today, I'm so glad to be joined by such an amazing, incredible talent, Blessing Offor. You've seen him on The Voice. I'm sure you've heard his single because I've been jamming to this all. I want to say summer because we're not even there yet. But
it's coming
in
though.
this
It's coming.
season, it's just such a beautiful anthem. Blessing, thank you for chatting with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, your new EP, Brighter Days, is out and just really sharing goodness in the world. I love it.
Man,
but before we get into
for.
the music, I want to introduce our audience to you.
Yes, please.
Let's start with your name. What an amazing name, Blessing. Where did it come from?
You know, I tell people I was born in Nigeria, and so they go, okay, so it's like a translation. So I speak Igbo, that's my language. So the blessing translated into my language is Ngozi. So that's how you'd say blessing. But blessing is on my birth certificate. It is Blessing. So it's not like a translation of a word. It's just blessing. So my sister's name is Peace, and my other sister's name is Mercy. So it kind of it runs in the family.
So your parents were like, they were on it. Where were they? Where did they get these words from? Were these declarations they were speaking over your life?
They just love, they love God, and they. I think their theory was probably like, anytime somebody calls your name, I want you to know who you are. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of how they work.
So you're a blessing, and you continue to be a blessing. I haven't mentioned this yet, but a big part of your journey and your testimony is, you're blind.
You can say blind, yes.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to be disrespectful.
Oh my God,
but
no.
I think, and it's what makes your testimony even more impactful because of all that you've done and how look at your beautiful spirit, all of it. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
Total blindness did not stop you, and here you are. How do you stay in that place of encouragement? I read a couple, a little bit of your testimony.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I kind of know, but I would love for you to share with our audience.
So where I come from, things are hard back home. And so just by upbringing, by nature, you quickly realize that external circumstances cannot and should not control your joy. You know what I mean? So no matter what it is, there are people back where I'm from that if they eat a meal, they're like, oh, I'm blessed today. So like a lot of the reason I think people can tend to find themselves unhappy is just because they're like, they expect a Maserati, right? When they have a very, very functioning Ford, and they're not grateful for that Ford that still gets them to point A to point B, or they have legs, you know what I mean? So it's like, we all want the thing and this other thing and this other thing, when really like we get to wake up in the morning. So our baseline attitude should be, gratitude, not to be cliche, but like, we all got to wake up today. That did not have to happen, So like life in context should only leave you grateful. It's like, okay, sure. Like I lost a bunch of my vision when I was a kid, right? But I'm here, right? I get to play music for a living. I'm living the dream that is the same for millions of people right now. So that's kind of just the way I grew up. And then if, on top of that, it's like, if you think about what other struggle you'd want, right? I don't want anybody else's life but mine. And I don't think you want anybody else's life but yours, because whatever they're going through, it's not for you. You know what I mean? So we all find ourselves exactly, right where God wants us to be and equipped for the thing he wants us to be doing. So, I wish it were something more magical than that, but that's all it is.
Well, it's beautiful, and it's something that we, especially as Americans, can really learn from, You're truly I was gonna say you're truly a
Say it.
blessing.
Say it.
Hilarious.
Say
Oh, that's great. But really it's inspiring.
it. Come on. Come on with the inspiration.
So Blessing, talk to us about that. I know that you're a man of faith, and this is
Mm,
for a faith audience.
sure.
Share a little bit of your testimony, because even culturally, it sounds like you
Yeah.
were probably raised in the faith, but we all have
Yes.
our own coming to Jesus moment when it's real.
Mm, yes. Yeah.
So can you
It's
share that
funny.
with us?
So my dad is one of the first, we're from Nigeria. My dad is the first Christian in his immediate family. So
Wow.
we had aunts and uncles that practiced different faiths. Nigeria is a majority Muslim country. So like on Friday, people would be at mosque. On Saturday, people would be, hanging out together. And on Sunday, we'd be at church. And so it's an
Mm,
interesting kind of thing when you were not the majority population. I really think Christianity thrives under pressure.
mm,
So there's a kind of beauty, there's an extra kind of like humility that you walk around with when you are in a situation where you are not in power. It reminds you that earthly power isn't the point. You know what I mean? Like in the New Testament, the church was never in power, but yet, man, did that thing grow, because the illusion of control is what I think we have to let go of. It's like, especially I think in the West, when we have this idea that like Christianity is the beginning of all of the things. And it's like, you know, uh, if you look at the New Testament, man, those guys were very, very persecuted, and in Nigeria, Christians could tell you what persecution means, you know what I mean? And
mm,
and in the Middle East and in so many parts of the world, they can define persecution for you because they'll be like, yeah, my uncle doesn't live anymore because somebody took his
mm,
head off, you know what I mean?
Jesus.
And it makes me it makes me kind of frustrated. Whereas in the West, if somebody doesn't say write Merry Christmas on your Starbucks cup, we go like, oh my God, what's happening and what's going on? And it's just like, hey, listen, none of this is promised. You know what I mean? Like the world isn't going to become more Christian. You know what I mean? Like it everything happening is meant to happen, and we have to continue to kind of rely on what we know to be true and not freak out when the world acts crazy, because the world is crazy. You know what I mean? So
Mm,
there's just this element of uh, being okay, not being in control, that Christians outside of the West are very comfortable with. Like you learn to be okay that you're not in control and you don't have the illusion of being in control. You know what I mean? And so the the faith aspect is very, very strong because everybody from third world countries who calls themselves a Christian will have stories of like, you know, unexplained rescues, unexplained provisions, like you get to deal with God on a really, really real basis out there because again, you have no control. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So if you really, really need something and you don't have it and you don't have the means to get it, and then it falls into your hands, you have no other choice but to be like, thank you, God. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it hits different back there for sure.
So how was it for you? Like when did that moment happen for you that you were like, this is what I believe,
Yeah,
regardless?
we grew up with it. Like we were quoting John 3:16 as kids, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
There was a
Hmm.
as a college student, I kind of went through the faith adventure. And again, it was like, because I'm from a place where you watch other people practice other faiths, you get to realize that there are beautiful things. Human beings are beautiful in and of themselves. Like
Right.
the I'm gonna get real technical. The imago Dei, right? Like there is something in us that is beautiful, right? So when you watch somebody say, "Hey, I'm a Muslim," there are very kind Muslims out there. You
Mhm.
know, they are wonderful and sweet, and some of them are my family. You know what I mean? And so you
Mm.
get to realize that being a Christian doesn't mean you're nicer, doesn't mean you are better put together. It doesn't mean you are deserving of anything more. right? It just means that you understand that your own goodness is not enough, and that
Mm,
ultimately God himself had to come down and reunite with you, and that there's nothing about you in and of yourself, in and of your own abilities there, but for the grace of God, so to speak, right?
mm,
So I think just, you know, in college, I was like, why do I believe this? You know, Buddhism is, you know, that sounds really sweet. You know what I mean? Those guys are really nice. They just kind of throw rugs down. You know, I was silly, but like, you know, they're really nice people over there. You know what I mean? We can be mean sometimes, but then you realize that it's, you know, it's not the point. And then when you really study history, you see that there is no culture that has not been violent or oppressive, or like the things that make us broken and human exists everywhere, right?
yeah.
So it can't be that, oh, once you're a Christian, you're all of a sudden this perfect person. You're still human, you know. So uh, I wrestled with all of the different faith journeys, and it honestly, it made Christianity more beautiful to me than ever. So this is, I know it's a little counterintuitive, but you know, I have a song on my EP called Believe, and
Mm,
that song asks a lot of questions, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes we're afraid to ask questions because somehow we
mm,
think it's like heresy, you know what I mean? Or sometimes we think we're only allowed to tell God how awesome he is or how good we think he's doing, or like, you know, it's like, God,
mm,
if you're in relationship with anybody, you're going to be like, hey, I'm mad at you. I'm really
mm.
frustrated with you today. Like, I don't appreciate this. Even if you're wrong, you're probably wrong. You know what I mean? Like, but God can handle all the emotions that you were experiencing. And so I think just wrestling and dealing with, and, you know, like Jacob in the desert, just, you know, going to God and be like, this is what I think, and I don't think, blah, 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 blah. And I just need you to, you know, you wrestle him for your blessing, so to speak. But like,
Mm,
all those things can't happen unless you're honest with yourself and with God, because I think there are a lot of people who are Christian, uh, diet Christian, because they are afraid to ask the questions. So they kind of go through the motions of their faith and haven't really wrestled with their faith. And your faith only gets stronger when you wrestle with God and you find him like more than adequate for all the questions you have.
mm. That is so powerful. You know, I'm a pastor's wife, and
Mm-hmm.
I hear, you know, a lot of times you see people run from God, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people are afraid to do exactly what you're saying, to wrestle. And I
Mm-hmm.
always say it's good to wrestle with God because it means you're in close proximity. It
Right. You're in
means
relationship.
he has his hands on
Yes.
you and you have your
Mm-hmm.
hands on him. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so much better than running. So
Right.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Brighter Days a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
was what was some of the inspiration behind the music for the album, the EP?
Man. So it's funny. You know, I don't think I'm like kind of like the traditional quote unquote Christian artist. I think of myself as an artist that is a Christian. You know what I mean? Because I grew up with like all the music in the world. You know what I mean? Motown and jazz and all of these things. And I have always felt really deeply that Christians go through heartbreak, right? Christians go through, you know, loss. Christians go, like I said, go through the same emotions that everybody goes through. And it's never made sense to me that like when my friends are done worshiping and they want a song that they can relate to their, you know, relationship issues, they have to turn on some other thing that's not Christian. You know what I mean? Because like, why does being a
Mm,
Christian mean all of a sudden we don't live human lives? So
mm,
my mindset with making this record was just to be human, right? So Tin Roof, uh, Believe, these are songs where it's me wrestling with, you know, faith, or like dealing with faith. Brighter Days is a hope song, right? Love Something is just a song about loss, right? It's like
mm,
you cared about this person, you lost them, and like it's okay. So I guess my whole thing is like I wanted to make a record that was full of human emotions, all the different kinds of emotions, because, you know, being a Christian is still contains within it being a person. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap. You understand? To just say to people that like, hey, here's a person. You know, I can't make music my dad can't listen to. You know what I mean? It's just like it's not. It makes me uncomfortable. I can't record songs that I couldn't play in front of my dad because my dad's just the sweetest, kindest, most God-loving man in the world. But that leaves a lot of freedom. You know what I mean? Like that leaves a lot of freedom. Like when you listen to Motown, you listen to the Jackson 5, and he's like, "Oh, baby, give me one more chance," right? There's nothing, right? Yeah, girl. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know? So like, there's nothing inherently ungodly about a man going, "I'm so wrong. I'm so sorry." You know what I mean? Like that is to be that humble and asking for reconciliation is a beautiful thing. So it's like, you know, I think sometimes we get stuck in our own bubbles. And I wrestled, you know, growing up. I was like, man, I love Jesus, but I don't think I'm like a worship leader per se. And I don't think I'm like a gospel artist because, man, all these Motown songs, these songs are wonderfully worshipful in their own way. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, so I don't know. That's where my head is, and that's where my heart is. And again, back to being honest, I was like, if I have to just be myself here. And yeah, so that's kind of what the EP is Blessing Offor, trying to be honest about Blessing Offor.
And I think that because of it, it will obviously have the massive appeal, you know?
God
And
willing.
yeah, and I mean, we haven't even talked about how gifted you are. Like, I mean, I'm sure everyone's hearing them runs and all that.
Oh,
um, but just you're just an incredible artist. You're so
Mm.
gifted. When I was watching, you know, I kind of went through um, one night. I just kind of went through all the playlists of all the
Oh,
videos
I'm
that you had of
so
you
sorry.
playing. Oh, stop it! It was amazing. It was a blessing. Oh gosh, I hate to
Mm.
keep saying that, but it's just what you are, man.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
But it was just incredible to see how gifted you were. And as I was watching, you know, I'm looking at your talent, I'm listening
Yeah.
to the music, the feeling that we're getting as we're listening. You know, it feels like, you know, you're on some next level. There's classic. You're a classic
Oh.
musician. It's yeah, I feel
Mm.
legend in me, you know.
Okay. Listen,
And
I'm gonna receive. I'm gonna receive.
receive it
Okay.
because I mean, yes, that's where the Lord has you, and I feel I can
Mm.
just see that on you. But let's talk about this real quick before
Yes.
we kind of wrap up because
Mm-hmm.
it will appeal to the masses, I believe, and you have
Mm.
the gifting that will bring you before kings, as the Bible talks about.
Oh, amen.
So how are you going to keep yourself
Mm.
still being you, blessing the
You
light that
know,
you are with the message that you have in your heart?
you know, I like I said, I lived in New York for 4 years,
Hmm.
and I think for the long, you know, God, okay, GAWD, okay, he knows the timing, right? He knows. So as a teenager, I was like, God, please let me get this record deal, let me get on the radio, let me do all the things, right? And
Hmm.
God was like, mm-mm, you are not ready. You are not ready, right? And in hindsight, looking back at the at my early, you know, teenage prayers, I was not ready, you know, because it's funny. The older I get, and hopefully the better I get at my craft, the humbler I am to realize that there are so many people better than me. So there has been this uh, maturing in me that I can only accredit to God, because it's just like, you know, that aspect of me that would have gotten carried away with all this, or full of himself, or prideful, um, is way less there than it has ever been. And I'm really, really grateful for the time out, so to speak, like the growth time away from all the stuff that I went through and lived through. Like I tell people, I accidentally took an apartment in Flatbush, and a rat ran across my foot. All right,
Oh,
like,
geez.
and I
I've
was
had
like,
that happen to me.
I was like 19, 20, and in my head, I was like, oh, this is gonna be my behind the music. there's a rat on my foot right now. And so rather than being like, ew, I was like, okay, cool, let's go. You know what I mean? So there's this hunger I had and still have. But along with that hunger, there was, I think, just that youthful doing it for the wrong reasons attitude that is natural to anybody that's 19. You know what I mean? And I'm just so like, I'm sure we all know the kid megastars that grew up and we all know the things they've all done. And it would have broken my dad's heart had I been in that position. You know what I mean? So I'm to talk like the gratitude for the waiting is beyond. So I think that perspective keeps me well in check because, like I said, I realize that I'm living the dream right now, and I can't believe I get to do it.
Wow. So yeah, you're at a place of maturity where you're able to steward the
Oof,
last year properly.
steward.
Yes.
Yes, amen. The blessings of Abraham.
Come on.
Come on, church.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm super grateful just to double down on everybody that takes a minute to listen, to follow, to do all the things that are so necessary nowadays. Y'all, I just get to wake up and go to there's a piano right over there. Go to the piano, write songs, go to the studio, record songs. And the fact that y'all, I mean, we're watching the numbers, y'all are engaging and loving it and streaming and radioing and all these things. I'm so in your debt and thankful. So thank you guys truly for all of that.